Hi, everyone. We are back for part two of Kimberly Young McClear's LinkedIn live show with me and YouTube show with me. Again, I'm Catherine Matthijs-Sundell, CEO of Stability Partners, and we're talking with Kim today, who has really been a personal hero for me as she has taken on her situation of being bullied and harassed and discriminated against and really turned it into fuel to make a lot of real change in the Coast Guard and in the military in general. And I just appreciate you taking the time. So hopefully we'll get through our technical glitches this time around. So I was just telling everyone as you were working on your volume there that one thing that I noticed when I was collecting stories on what survivors have done or what makes them feel like they consider themselves as a survival was that they really made a specific decision to make a change. And I heard that from you when you were talking that you really sort of made this conscious decision that you were going to use this energy for good. And so I think that's a good tip for anybody who's not sure what to do. Your next step is to really decide what your future holds and go with it. So Kim, tell us a little bit about what you think the benefits are of engaging in training, and does training really work if an organization is going to do training on anti-bullying or anti-harassment?
Yeah, this one's tough for me because I guess it kind of depends. I know one instance where delivered, and it did give someone the confidence to speak up for themselves. So that is a possibility, but I think that the training has to be delivered in such a way that really it allows for people to kind of feel the significance. If we're just kind of glossing through, PowerPoint slides, that's clearly not going to be effective. But training is only one part of the solution. If people know the definitions, they perhaps have a policy for the organization. If that policy is not being enforced, and then if there's violations of policy and there's no accountability, then the training it just really just becomes a check in the box, unfortunately, from an organizational viewpoint.
Yeah.
So it can be.
Yeah, I was talking a lot about that during Me Too, because I was reading a lot of articles for employers. What do you do in a Me Too movement, and how do you keep yourself out of the spotlight as an employer? And I just found a lot of the advice was, make sure you have a policy in place for sexual harassment, and make sure you're doing harassment prevention training. And I was just appalled by that, because everybody basically already does that, at least here in California, where I'm located, and clearly that doesn't make a difference. So I just thought it was a real missed opportunity. And I was just like, wait, that's not good advice. There's so much more. Because yeah, you can have a policy, but if it's not being used in the right ways, or it's being ignored, which I'm sure was the case in your scenario, what's the point of the policy? So it's got to be a culture that goes along with that. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I know, and you touched on this earlier too, that a lot of times people say, well, what's the big deal? We'll just change Kim's valuation, and then she can have her dignity back, as if that's what it's about. I know a lot of the reason laws against workplace bullying haven't passed is legislatures get caught up in this whole thing of, well, we can't regulate incivility, and we can't regulate rudeness. So talk to me about that, and how do we help people understand that that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about bullying?
Right. Yeah, it's on the one hand, for people who've been through it, we get it. But how do you articulate this?
Uh-oh, we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're back.
I will sit closer. I'm not sure what's going on. So I think, again, it's really hard to, how do you articulate that to someone or a group of people who haven't experienced it firsthand? And there's a big part of me that says, well, you shouldn't have to experience it to get it, to advocate, to end it. Yeah. And I mean, if you're talking about, like in my specific case, my value was lowered, and they did correct the marks. But the evaluation was only corrected after the Department of Homeland Security secretary directed the commandant, the service chief, to fix it. And that's a piece of paper, right? And so if we're not looking at what are the underlying behaviors that led to someone thinking that they could use their power to cause harm, then it's just fixing a piece of paper, which is not addressing the harm that was done to the person. So if it took that much effort to get a piece of paper corrected, it's just that much more, to work towards trying to make sure that people are treated with dignity. And that's just really been something that I've noticed a lot with I can only speak for the Coast Guard, is it just seems to be this general attitude of like, oh, well, right? That was 4 years ago, case closed. I actually had someone who recently told me this, which was actually very disheartening.
Yeah.
And so it's not case closed, right, for the people who are involved, because if you have endured bullying for multiple years or whatever the duration is, fixing a piece of paper, and that's actually a very rare outcome, to be honest. A lot
Yeah.
of people get bullied out of the organization, and no one even, they just write you off the books. So I would say that even organizations that do have policies, you have to have a culture where you're holding people accountable, which means you have to have leadership that doesn't treat the policy like, the art that's on my wall here, right? That it has to carry weight, it has to mean something, which means that we have to get closer at compassion, and just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean it's not any less real.
That's a fair point. Yeah. I have been coming to this realization lately that one of the problems that we face as a society in resolving bullying at work and harassment, I mean, certainly harassment's been illegal since 1969, but it's not, and discrimination, but that's not any better now than it was back then, I think. One piece of that is really making room for emotions at work. And I think, that goes along with what you're saying around empathy. And we don't have enough, we don't focus on that at work. And everything is like goals and numbers and outcomes. And being bullied or harassed or any of these things, even being treated with some rudeness, is an emotional experience. And it really goes against who we are as just beings. We need to be valued and feel accepted. And so those behaviors really violate that need, that basic human need that we have. And so then it's emotional. And until we feel comfortable to be emotional and vulnerable at work, it's going to be a difficult process. So as you know, you were very vulnerable in all of that time that you went through. And that's where part of your dignity gets taken away. I think that you were forced to sort of be, just bearing it all.
Absolutely. And in the military, we are kind of indoctrinated to have a very limited range of emotions. And just to give a very short illustration, if you're going through a boot camp or basic training, they have kind of like a canned responses. So if someone approaches you and they say, "How are you doing?" The answer is always "outstanding, sir," or "outstanding, ma'am," which is like, I believe, most sophisticated of answers, especially when you're talking about gender pronouns. And so it's we are, as human beings, we obviously have more range than outstanding. So if you're already indoctrinating someone to communicate something that is contrary to how you actually feel, you're basically training people to not be vulnerable, to share how they authentically feel. And that to speaking up in meetings if you have a different opinion. That could be speaking up if you're being harassed. So you're literally indoctrinating people to, if you're not doing outstanding, we don't want to hear about it, right? So if you're being harassed, so it's very unfortunate, and it's such a very outdated thought process, like how you were saying about metrics. Have more dimensions than that, and so yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, luckily, kind of non-military organizations. There are some out there who have started to measure employee engagement and job satisfaction and things. So they're starting to look at people and how they're doing as part of their metrics. But we certainly have a really, really, really long way to go. And then the military is probably far behind that in terms of measuring how people are doing as part of the success. So tell me, what are some of the things that you're working on right now in your journey of making it better for those who follow behind you, in addition to being on the cover of Glamour magazine, which is just so cool. So if you didn't know, Kim's on the cover of Glamour magazine with several other individuals related to the Crown Act, and just there's a great video on Glamour's page with some actresses using phrases that other women have heard over the years around professionalism in their hair. And I actually am going to start using that in my harassment prevention training here in California, because sometimes people don't understand that being told that your braids are not professional. And so it's kind of crazy that how you might wear your hair has to be regulated. But I'm glad that we did it so that we can continue to push forward. But tell us what else you're working on. You've got a lot happening.
Yeah, no, up to something. So just to touch on the Glamour article. So that story talks about it's about the Crown Act, but the piece that I was interviewed, my wife and I. So Gail has locks as her style. My hair's natural. As well. And so back in 2013, out of the blue, the Coast Guard said, hey, these hairstyles are unprofessional. So for me personally, I know there's probably a phrase about like pick your battles. I feel like I was told that growing up. But I don't know. I just kind of feel like if something is wrong, it's wrong. And if it's wrong, you speak up. So I know that a lot of women didn't have the the bandwidth to challenge it, because it's on top of, maybe harassment that you're already dealing with. So, who wants to go against, the grain, so to speak, to fight to change yet another policy. So the article kind of just featured that part of our journey. But I think it's kind of symptomatic of just how I approach life in general, and not to be a bystander. And if it's causing harm, let's educate folks and let's change the policies and let's hold ourselves accountable to it. So other projects I'm working on right now. I'm one of the co-founders for I think this is the first, I don't want to misspeak, but the military's first anti-racist and queer LGBT affinity group. So in the military, we have these kind of volunteer groups where we can really just come together and focus on like diversity and inclusion, making sure that people are in safe working environments. So it's all volunteer. So the name of the group is called Coast Guard Spectrum, and I'm one of the co-founders, as I mentioned before. So we believe that human beings, we're very we have a lot of dimensions, and so the more that we understand marginalization and intersectionality, then everyone else really benefits. And usually what I'll just say the Coast Guard does or the military does is you kind of focus on a majority, and that could be defined in any different ways, but we rarely focus on the numerical small subset of an organization, and we basically say, well, they're on their own. And so we've really just tried to turn that upside down and say, no, let's actually focus on the people who have been historically pushed out to the margins, whether it's because of bullying, harassment, sexual assault, what have you. And let's bring everyone into the fold. So I'm really proud about the work that we're doing right now. I'm actually going to be leading a workshop for this month, kind of in honor of LGBTQ History Month, and also National Bullying Prevention Month. But doing a workshop on psychological safety, just to kind of amplify what you were saying before, Catherine, about, we have to get to a point where we're seen as human beings and valued as human beings, and people should feel and must feel psychologically safe at work. So that's kind of a broad initiative that we're doing right now. And it's no secret I'm a whistleblower. I testified on the Hill back in December of 2019. And, I'm an open book. And so I continue to provide guidance and mentorship to survivors across the military, to be honest, in all branches of those who are learning how to file various complaints. They just need a sounding board. So that's just something that I do just kind of on a regular basis. And then we just had our 2020 Survivor Summit, which you participated in. Thank you again for that. And again, just kind of bringing together people from across the country to just really say no, right? No to all forms of violence at work. So I'm always doing something, but my passion is really to end all forms of violence at work, and intentionally go into spaces where people have the tools and the resources and the confidence to eradicate all these types of harmful behaviors.
That's why you're my personal hero. I mean, where do you get the energy to do all of this? Why do you continue to do this?
I wish I had an answer other than it just resonates. I don't know. My day job is cybersecurity, and I'm passionate about that as well. But I don't know. I just think that these are solvable problems, and I really, really, really do not like to see people suffer. And if I have any ability to reduce harm, I think that's just how I'm wired. And so again, I'm just really fortunate that I have fuel in the tank, and I'm going to keep going as long as I can. I think, especially in today's global and national climate, we have to really come together and
Yeah. And that's one thing that's been cool for me too. Just once I started Civility Partners in 2009, you just start working your way through the United States and meeting other people who are interested in, the same thing, in solving bullying and harassment and discrimination in the way that works for them and how they operate. I'm an HR consultant, and that's how I go about this journey. You've got all of these connections and things you've been doing in the Coast Guard. There's other whistleblowers and other foundations, and it seems like we're all really coming together and collaborating and helping each other. And so that's really cool to be part of a community that's really focused on the same thing, all in our own ways, but we're all chipping away at it. So, and I know that's how I met you. We did talk the first time a long time ago. I actually distinctly remember sitting in my backyard talking to you at my old house. So that was quite a while ago. So, well, I guess one last question I have for you is just, you stand out to me as someone who kind of has post-traumatic growth, right? You went through something horrible and you use that as fuel to continue to make positive change, versus others who, certainly understandably have gone down a different path and just feel so torn apart by, and I know you feel torn apart too, but that there's kind of I'm just curious, is there one characteristic or one thing that you can point to so that other targets listening in could say, okay, that's something I can do to get control back? Or that's, how do other people follow your footsteps and really grow from their experience?
Yeah, that's a very profound question. It's something I reflect on a lot because a lot of survivors reach out to me, and it's tough. I think for me, for my particular journey, I mean, a lot of harm was caused, a lot of damage was caused for years, and I'm not a medical doctor, but I don't know if there's long-term health effects to what I endured, since 2014, and so
I'm sure there are.
but I think for me, when I kind of made that decision of like enough, it was a very definitive line. And
Mhm.
and it was June of 2016. I remember the day, and my health was just like rock bottom. And my physician was basically saying, like, Kim, like, something has to change. and just the impact this had on my marriage, on my relationships with friends, family. I mean, so I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But for me, when I made that conscious decision in summer of 2016 to really fight, I was really fighting for myself, but I was also fighting for other people. And for me, I honestly just had to redefine what my goals were.
Mhm.
Uh, my goals no longer were about, well, why don't people like me? Why am I not accepted? Why did they break the law? That that's not my goal. My goal became, how can I center on survivors? How can I center on, I have this unique experience, although it's very tragic, but it's still unique and it's mine. But how
Mhm.
this for something that is positive and constructive, and while balancing, and it's still a daily struggle, but while balancing not causing any further harm to people who I really care about, who are closer in my life. And that's just a conscious decision. I wake up and I say, okay, I'm only going to do this part here, and I'm going to have to reinvest in relationships here. But for me, again, it was really rooted on, I rejected this concept that I was going to allow anyone or anything to rob me of my dignity. I was prepared to leave the Coast Guard. I was prepared to walk away from my pension.
Mhm.
I was nowhere near my 20-year mark for military to get your pension. And I was prepared to walk away because I chose me. And in choosing me, I wanted to use the essence of me to then help other people. But I refused to allow the Coast Guard to continue to harm me. And
Mhm.
I realized that, and they were trying, and they still do, but I smile. I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I had suicide ideation that summer, and so.
Ah, we lost her. Oh, there she's back. Okay. I'm like, I'm on the edge of my seat.
But yeah, I mean, it was really just, I had to make that decision. And I chose me so that I can give all of me to the world in terms of contributing to society and making the planet a little bit better than how I found it. And I just didn't think it was fundamentally fair that the Coast Guard was robbing me of my confidence, my talents, my gifts, my self-esteem. That
Yeah.
just rejected the whole concept. So I just really just had a light bulb moment. And to be honest, in that light bulb moment, and I was just severely depressed, I just had this epiphany of, like, it was just such clarity. And I knew what I had to do. I didn't know what the outcome would be when I filed the complaints after that, but I just knew I had to choose myself. I chose to live. And I wanted to help other people. I just knew in my core I did not want to have other people experience even a fraction of what I experienced. And I also knew that I had also a rare combination of the institutional knowledge.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think if it wasn't for those combination of things, I don't think I would have been able to prove my case with the inspector general. That's a very high bar to prove.
Mhm.
Um, so again, I just thought, as tragic as these experiences have been, I think I can actually use experiences to help other people, and I'm gonna smile doing it, and glamour, I'm gonna look good doing it too. Just a little glamour. But it's like life is short, but it could be really long if you're not happy, and I think everyone deserves to be happy. So again, I'm just really lucky, and I say that intentionally because I know that many do not survive in the same way. And if I could just quickly say this last little tidbit, in 2019, I was really fortunate to be invited by a member of Congress to go to the State of the Union address. And Congressman Joe Corden of Connecticut, I was his guest of honor. And at the reception, I had a chance to meet Congresswoman Judy Chu, and her nephew died by suicide in the Marine Corps from a hazing incident, or for many hazing incidents. And so just to be able to, again, just have these moments and conversations with so many families and people who have been harmed on so many levels, for me, it's like, how could I not continue to speak up and speak out? You
Yeah.
know, I don't know, I wake up and I say, let's make it a good day.
Well, you meet people along the way that sometimes you just feel like you connect with their soul, or you can feel their good soul coming through. And that is definitely how I feel about you. It just, your good and your desire to make a better place of the world really just comes through. And you're so humble also. And I just really appreciate being your friend. And thank you so much for being here with me today. Where can people get a hold of you so that we can make sure they can find you if they want to talk to you more?
Let's see. So I am on Facebook. I'm also on LinkedIn. So I think probably LinkedIn is probably the best way. Kimberly Young McClear.
Yeah.
And
And then you also have a website, coastguardrighttheship.com.
yes.
Right? Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I always say, well, it's the internet days, so you could just Google me and you'll find me. So, well, thank you for being such an inspiration. And, I look forward to your continued updates. I love it when I get an email from you and you're like, oh, I'm doing glamour, or, oh, I'm at the White House today, or I don't know, one day you'll be like, oh, I'm running for president, which would be so great. So great. Anyways, all right. Well, thank you. And I will talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you.